You know, it's really astonishing when you properly stop and think about it, the sheer power packed into something as seemingly simple as, well, our words,
Yeah.
your word is your wand. It's more than just a catchy phrase, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It speaks to this incredible ability our language has to like mold our mood, shape our experiences, even, in a very real sense, create our reality.
Absolutely. And this isn't some newfangled idea either. If you look back through history, you find this really profound understanding of the weight and influence of language just woven into the fabric of so many cultures.
Right, like ancient storytelling, for instance. It wasn't just about, entertaining people around a campfire.
Yeah, not at all.
It was treated as a sacred duty, really, a way to keep history alive, to pass down those vital lessons and moral codes that held communities together. The very act of speaking, of choosing those specific words, was treated with immense
That's a
reverence.
really crucial point. In societies where literacy wasn't widespread, spoken words carried an even greater responsibility, didn't they?
Yeah, definitely.
They were the main vessel for knowledge, for wisdom, cultural identity. The storytellers were essentially the keepers of their world, and their language shaped that world for everyone else.
And you see this echoed in more formal contexts, too. Think about that biblical quote: By thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. That's a pretty stark illustration of the profound moral, even spiritual consequences attached to our linguistic choices throughout history. It really makes you think about the impact our utterances can have.
It certainly does. It moves beyond just the everyday use of language and suggests a fundamental link between what we say, what we express verbally, and our ultimate standing, whether that's societal or spiritual.
Which brings us neatly to Florence Scovel Shinn and her influential book, Your Word is Your Wand. She was writing in the early 20th century, and she really brought this ancient understanding into a more, well, modern framework of personal empowerment. Her core belief was that our words are, quite literally, tools we can use to transform our lives. By consciously choosing positive and affirmative language, she argued, we could actively draw joy, health, abundance into our experiences.
Yeah, and what's so interesting about Shin is how she took this long-held understanding and presented it as a practical, almost hands-on approach to personal change.
Hmm.
It wasn't just about abstract philosophical ideas. It was about intentionally using your language as a catalyst for a better life, you know?
So we have this historical thread, this persistent recognition of the power of words. But let's dig a little deeper now. How exactly does our language exert such a strong influence on our mood and energy? Like, what are the underlying mechanisms at play here?
Okay, yeah. One key aspect is something psychologists call cognitive framing.
Cognitive framing.
Think of it this way. The language we use acts like a frame around an event, and that influences how we perceive it, how we interpret it. So consistently using positive language to describe something can lead to a more positive overall outlook.
And the reverse is true too, I guess.
Exactly. Negative language can reinforce a pessimistic viewpoint.
Yeah.
It's like choosing to see the glass half full or half empty.
Hmm.
The words we pick often dictate our perspective.
That's a great analogy. It really highlights how our language can steer our mindset.
Yeah.
If you constantly say, oh, this is going to be a disaster, you're almost pre-programming yourself to look for and emphasize the negative bits, aren't you?
Precisely. You're
Yeah.
setting that frame. And then there's emotional resonance. Words have this direct line to our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Consider the impact of a really heartfelt compliment.
Mm-hmm.
It can instantly lift your mood, boost your confidence.
Yeah, totally.
Conversely, a harsh insult can be deeply wounding, right? It affects your self-worth, your overall emotional state. The emotional charge that words carry is just undeniable.
It's almost like words have their own inherent energy that vibrates within us, creating either harmony or discord.
That's a very insightful way to put it, actually.
Yeah.
And this emotional impact isn't just in our heads, it has physiological connections too.
Really? How so?
Well, research has suggested that regularly using positive affirmations can actually help lower levels of stress hormones like cortisol.
Wow.
On the other hand, dwelling on negative self-talk or being exposed to negative language can trigger the release of these same stress hormones, impacting our physical well-being.
So the words we use aren't just abstract sounds, they can have a tangible effect on our bodies. That's quite remarkable.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we also need to consider how our language shapes our social interactions. The way we communicate influences how others see us and respond to us.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
If we express ourselves with positivity and encouragement, we're more likely to cultivate positive relationships, build a strong support network, and these social connections, in turn, have a profound impact on our mood and overall sense of well-being. Feeling supported and understood can be incredibly uplifting.
So it sets up this kind of beneficial cycle, doesn't it? Positive words foster positive interactions, which then reinforce those positive feelings.
Exactly. Now, it's fascinating to see how our understanding of this power has evolved over time. As we touched on, ancient views often had a spiritual or mystical dimension. Think about the Hebrew tradition, where the creation of the universe is described through divine speech. Let there be light, and boom, there was light.
That's the ultimate example of your word is your wand on a cosmic scale.
Indeed it is. But then, with the development of modern psychology, we began to explore this relationship between language and the mind in a more scientific way.
Right.
The field of psycholinguistics emerged, focusing specifically on the intricate connection between language and our cognitive processes. Concepts like self-talk. That inner dialogue we all have became really central to understanding how our internal language shapes our self-perception and our emotional state.
That internal monologue.
Yeah, are we constantly criticizing ourselves with our inner voice? Or are we offering words of encouragement and support? Makes a big difference.
It's that internal monologue that often just runs on autopilot beneath our conscious awareness. But it can have such a powerful effect. That relentless inner critic, fueled by negative self-talk, can really chip away at your confidence and happiness.
Precisely. And this understanding directly led to the development of therapeutic approaches like cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
Oh, yes, CBT.
A core principle of CBT is identifying and then modifying those negative patterns of self-talk. By consciously changing the language we use with ourselves, we can actually alter unhelpful thought patterns and improve our emotional well-being.
So it's about becoming aware of our internal wand, if you like, and learning to wield it in a more constructive way.
Exactly. And this connects directly to contemporary practices like positive affirmations.
Okay, affirmations. We hear a lot about those.
Right. These are essentially deliberate positive statements we repeat to ourselves, often with the intention of boosting self-esteem and motivation. They've become a really popular tool in self-help circles. And interestingly, research is starting to uncover the neurological basis for why they might actually be effective.
Oh, that's intriguing. What does the research suggest there?
Well, studies using brain imaging, like fMRI, have indicated that when individuals engage in positive affirmations, it can activate areas of the brain associated with self-related processing and reward pathways.
Wow.
It's almost like giving your brain a little shot of positive reinforcement just by repeating these statements.
That's incredible. So those seemingly simple statements like I am capable or I am worthy can actually have a tangible impact on our neural pathway.
That's what the emerging evidence suggests, yes.
Mhm.
And this aligns really well with the broader principles of positive psychology,
Right, positive psychology.
which emphasizes how positive language, expressions of gratitude, optimistic ways of thinking, how all these contribute to overall happiness and life satisfaction. Interventions that focus on cultivating these positive linguistic habits have shown definite promise in improving mental health outcomes.
It all keeps coming back to the power we hold in the language we choose to use, both outwardly and, perhaps even more importantly, inwardly.
It really does. However, it's also vital to maintain a balanced perspective here.
Okay.
While the benefits of positive language are pretty evident, we also need to acknowledge the potential downsides of what's sometimes called toxic positivity.
Toxic positivity. Yeah, I've heard that term.
It's that pressure to maintain a relentlessly positive attitude, even when you're facing genuine pain or difficulty. And that can actually invalidate real, legitimate emotions.
That's such a crucial point. It's not about suppressing or ignoring difficult feelings, is it?
Exactly. Authentic well-being involves acknowledging and processing the full spectrum of human emotions. Simply trying to plaster over sadness or anger with superficial positivity isn't healthy or sustainable in the long run.
Right.
True resilience comes from allowing ourselves to feel what we feel while also consciously working to cultivate a more positive and constructive inner dialogue over time. It's a balance.
So it's about being honest with ourselves and our experiences, but also being mindful of the language we use to navigate those experiences.
Precisely. It's not about denying reality, but about choosing how we frame and speak about it, both to ourselves and others, in a way that ultimately supports our well-being.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together for our listeners. What are some practical takeaways from this deep dive into the power of your words?
Well, I think the very first step is simply to cultivate a greater awareness of your own word choices. Start paying attention.
Just noticing.
Just noticing. Pay attention to the language you use in your internal self-talk and in your conversations with others. Ask yourself, are my words generally encouraging and uplifting, or are they often critical and negative? Do they tend to foster hope and possibility, or do they reinforce feelings of negativity and limitation?
So it really begins with simply tuning in, noticing what we're actually saying to ourselves and to the world around us.
Absolutely. And once you have that awareness, you can start to make more conscious choices. Maybe consider incorporating positive affirmations into your daily routine if that feels right for you. Even a few simple positive statements repeated with intention can have a cumulative effect over time.
And it's important, as you said, to remember that it's perfectly okay to acknowledge and experience negative emotions. The goal isn't to eradicate them, but maybe to avoid getting stuck in those repetitive cycles of negative language that can just deepen those feelings.
Exactly. Practice reframing negative thoughts when you catch them. For instance, instead of thinking, ugh, I always fail at this, try shifting to something like, okay, this was a setback, but what can I learn from it? How can I try again? Small changes in your internal language can lead to really significant shifts in your overall perspective.
That makes sense. And also consider the impact of your words on the people around you, right?
Yes, definitely. Consciously choosing kind and supportive language in your interactions doesn't just uplift others. It also contributes to a more positive social environment. And as we've discussed, that can have a beneficial ripple effect back onto your own well-being.
Right, that positive feedback loop.
Precisely. Our words have a powerful influence, extending way beyond ourselves. Choosing them with intention is really an act of self-care and also care for our wider community.
This has been such an insightful exploration. It truly highlights the profound influence that these seemingly small units of communication, our words, have on both our inner and outer lives. It's definitely something to really think about going forward.
It really is, and it's an ongoing journey, this understanding of the intricate connection between language and our overall well-being. Consciously choosing our words is continuous practice, isn't it? It's a way to actively shape our thoughts, our emotions, our interactions, and it offers, I think, significant potential for personal growth and maybe a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the